This is Asia's Farm to Fork Five Good Questions podcast, bringing you insights and views from across Asia's food value chain. Now, for today's interview. Hi again, everybody. I'm Duke Hip, host of Asia's Farm to Fork Five Good Questions podcast, and we're pleased to be joined by another great guest today. We have with us Miss Sasireka Rajendran. She's the Asia Regional Manager for the Minor Use Foundation. Sasi, how are you?
Hi, Duke. Nice to meet you. I'm good. How are you?
All good. We're excited about having the conversation today. So thank you for making time for this.
Thank you so much for having me in the podcast. I've been following and listening to your podcast, and I'm really glad to be part of this knowledge sharing initiative.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks again for doing this. So if it's okay, we'll jump right in and get
Sure,
started. Yeah.
sure.
So with the first question, I'd like to really just to kind of hand it over to you and sort of, if you can, maybe start a conversation, insights you can share around what exactly minor use crops are. I know for those who are listening in, maybe not familiar with that term, and why are they so important, and what your organization, the Minor Use Foundation, is doing to support the sustainable production of these minor use crops, and anything you can share with us.
So thanks for this question, Duke. So every time when we meet with our new partners, the first question would be what is minor use crops? And I'm glad I could answer that question today. Minor use in agriculture generally refers to the tools or crop protection tools that are available for growers of fruits, vegetables, nuts, and spices, or collectively what we refer to as specialty crops. Most of the crop protection tools are focused around crops that are cultivated in larger areas such as rice, wheat, maize, soybean, and sugar. Often that crops are cultivated in smaller acreages or those that yield better return to the farmers and most important for global nutrition. So for example, in 2023, Vietnam's dragon fruit export volume was nearly 600,000 tons with an export value of approximately 600 million US dollars. In the first 5 months of 2024, the cumulative export value was around 260 US dollars, so 260 million US dollars. So higher earnings enable families to afford better education and healthcare. If we look at the global picture also, we see the same trend on how the specialty crops are increasing the livelihoods of farmers. For example, in Ethiopia, coffee exports as primary specialty crop generated approximately 860 million US dollars in revenue in 2020, according for about 25% of the country's total export earnings. The World Bank also reported that in the regions with exposed coffee production, the poverty rate decreased by up to 10%. Even in Peru, if we look at it, the families involved in exporting specialty quinoa have higher school enrollment rates than the national average. So all this kind of sums up the importance of specialty crops to the growers around the globe and not just Asia. So in addition, inclusion of specialty crops on farms of all size increases agricultural biodiversity. Farmers with great agricultural biodiversity are more resilient, less vulnerable to pests, and more able to adapt to climate change. It is very common for smallholder farmers to have two or more primary crops that they cultivate, but also have fruit trees as a border crop or a small number of fruits and vegetables on their farm, either for local consumption or for export. So these specialty crops are actually hugely important for the health of the growers' farm. So we would say 20 to 40% of the global production is lost due to pests and diseases based on the data that we have, which creates a huge economic loss for the growers, and specialty crops do not have many crop protection tools available to combat these pest pressures. So our work is to build partnerships, especially between governments, growers, and private sectors to facilitate access to crop protection tools for these growers. So our core work is to ensure pesticides or biopesticides are registered in the partnering countries for specialty crops so that the farmers get access to best, most modern and crop protection solutions.
Thank you for that. That's a great answer. And you touched a lot there, talked a lot about the farmer, the importance of the farmer and access and technology just generally, some of the challenges they face. With the second question, I like to kind of continue into that discussion a bit more. We talk a lot on this podcast about, I guess, the uniqueness of agriculture and food production in Asia and home to more smallholders than anywhere in the world. So, and we talk about that in the context just of general agriculture, but specifically now with specialty crops, I'd like to maybe get your insights some more into that particular demographic. Are there unique challenges that the specialty crop farmers are facing specifically in helping realize a more sustainable and more productivity and all the things that we're all hoping for and pushing for with farmers generally? Any specific challenges you can share?
I think the most specific challenge would be to get the registered crop protection tools available in their country for use. So it has been well established that the specialty crops suffer from a lack of access to crop protection tools. So because of this, governments like the US, Canada, Brazil, Australia, and the EU have created specific programs called minor use program just to support the access to crop protection tools for specialty crops. In addition, organizations like FAO, OECD have put out guidance documents to support regulators or governments agencies that want to support the growers in overcoming these challenges. So, the truth that we have observed firsthand throughout the world is that growers will do what it takes to protect their crops. And without registered use, they will use things off label, which does not always lead to safe or environmentally sustainable outcomes. In terms of what is needed for governments to register safe and efficacious use of minor crops, there are three ways to get that where we can where we see the most impact could be. So we suggest, the first way could be the regulators can utilize international guidance documents like the ones I mentioned to set standards for specialty crops, even where there isn't data specifically available on the commodity of interest. The second would be that the growers can submit project requests to the Minor Use Foundation, and we can help generate data to get those products registered. And finally, our approach is also to have governments share information between different countries and collaborate to facilitate registrations through technical collaboration, to address these challenges.
Thanks for that. Another great answer. And it gets me thinking about maybe a follow-up, the same topic generally around policy. And we talk a lot about basically what you just kind of led into a bit there, thinking about, all these different and interesting technologies and innovations. And no matter how great they are, if there's no regulatory framework there to support it and access to those new technologies, it's a missed opportunity, right? So I'd like to get your thoughts again through the prism of, the specialty crop growers. Are there any specific policies you see, or maybe gaps in policies where there is an opportunity or a chance to do some good there on their behalf?
Yeah. So when it comes to policy, we need to acknowledge the fact that most offices in Asia do not adequately have enough personnel or stay updated with the evolving technologies in harmonizing regulations across the region. So, for example, many nations in the West, in other regions have switched to online system of application review and approval for pesticide registration, which is slowly being picked up in few countries in Asia. So currently, all the major and minor crops are reviewed under the same category, which makes it challenging environment for the stakeholders involved. In addition, many of these challenges can be managed much better when their governments make investment in their growers through a minor use program. So, minor use programs are very practical and feasible even for countries with limited resources. In fact, they are most useful and impactful in resource constrained environments. So, they are there are tools for the regulators to prioritize the specialty crops needs in their own countries and utilize internationally recognized methodologies to address them. So these regulatory changes will help growers and regulators to fast track the registration process for minor crops.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that as well, Sasi. Um, I wanted to talk to you. You mentioned the UN a minute ago, I think, and some of the resources available. And so they have an annual report that they issue through the FAO called the State of Food Security and Nutrition Report. That's the SOFI report. And every year, we unfortunately learn in most recent years, Asia is one and two in all the wrong categories. And specifically, it's frustrating to see some of these lingering numbers that, again, are frankly just heading in the wrong direction. Let me, if I can, just read out a couple of these statistics for you to kind of paint a picture. Approximately 2.8 billion cannot afford a healthy diet right now. 1.66 billion facing the challenge. That particular challenge are in Asia alone. Additionally, the rate of malnutrition is rising across all socioeconomic groups. And global obesity rates are projected to increase from 14% in 2020 to 24% by 2035. So again, not a great portrait right now where things are heading. I'm curious about your thoughts with minor use crops, specialty crops. Again, they have a role to play maybe in helping contribute to a more diverse diet and helping address some of these issues.
You're correct that a lack of access to nutritious food is a major driver of malnutrition and malnutrition globally. So, the mission of our foundation is to ensure a world where fruits, vegetables, nuts, and herbs are plentiful for the people. So, increased production of fruits, vegetables, and nuts has the power to dramatically change the nutrition reality for people around the world. Going back to the smallholder farmers I referenced earlier, the fruits and vegetables they are growing on their farm, maybe providing them and their family with essential nutritional inputs, getting them access to the safe crop protection tools they need can be really transformative. The step that we are taking to ensure farmers have resources and legally approved products to protect the crop is very much essential. The additional income from these specialty or minor crops will also help the farmers to expand and improve their standard of living. So we have a long way to go in terms of making regulatory changes. As we all know, it takes time and ensuring availability of products for all minor use crops. However, it is good that we are moving in the right direction towards the goal. FAO's initiatives such as One Country, One Product Priority initiative stress the importance of specialty crops to their local country context. Also, FAO's International Year of Millets or fruits and vegetables are also focusing on awareness on the need for a balanced diet. So I stop by saying, we are moving in the right direction towards our goal to ensure, we address this malnutrition issue.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, it's very insightful, and again, very clear there's a role to play there for specialty crops in helping address the problem. The last question is here, the fifth and final question. It may be the hardest question. I think sometimes that it seems to stump some of the folks that we have on the podcast. So I'll leave it with you to think about this. Of course, we're here in Asia. This may be the most diverse culinary region in the world. So many great dishes and foods that people enjoy, and goes on and on. So the question we have for you, this is our signature question for the season, is what is your favorite? Do you have a favorite regional dish, your go-to, or something that you would, highlight that maybe gets overlooked?
So, like I said in the beginning, I listen to your podcast, and every time when people answer this question, I always feel, how could they just pick one, in the diverse cuisine that they have? And I even tried some of the foods that were recommended by the previous experts. So, coming to, my preference, I was really picky before I started traveling, across the Southeast Asian region. But then, as I visited different countries, I had different kind of foods to pick up, and uh, for me personally I loved the fruits that are native to Vietnam, longan and dragon fruit, which is very nutritious, and it was amazing. And I recently also visited Philippines, which influences my answer now. I loved the coconut pie that they had, and I would even say Philippines is kind of a capital of desserts in the Southeast Asian region with so many desserts to offer. So I really enjoyed the different kind of cuisine that we have in the Southeast Asia. Yeah.
Yep, all good answers. I don't think we've had any of those as well. This is the best of first for each of them. So they make the list. We'll have to have some sort of we'll have to think of some way to maybe to have a tournament among these different dishes and foods, but all great answers. Sasi, thank you so much for joining us today. And again, your insights were super helpful, and appreciate your time again today. Thanks, Sasi. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast. And if you did, please rate, review, and subscribe. We look forward to bringing you another Five Good Questions interview.